He, a member of old New York's idle rich, in the upper echelon of his fellows, and betrothed, then married to the most eligible girl of his class. She, a daughter of old New York, who has spent the vast majority of her life in Europe, been disastrously married to a scoundrel of a count, and come back to New York for the company of her brethren, and to end her marriage once and for all, woefully ignorant of the much more stringent social norms of the society into which she has thrown herself. The two find themselves inexorably drawn to each other, falling more and more in love despite their marital statuses. However, old New York society fears scandal above all else, and the two soon find themselves in the midst of a cleverly concealed conspiracy to drive them apart, all while their conspirators pretend to have never suspected a thing. Can our star-crossed lovers fight the odds and find true love despite the forces of society? No. Our main character is Newland Archer. He is shown to be a narcissist, misogynist, and elitist, but so are all the other men in his class. Among them, he is, if not a liberal, at least more open to new ideas. He begins the book by announcing his engagement to Miss May Welland a bit early because her exotic European cousin, Countess Ellen Olenska, has just returned to New York. We never learn what exactly went on at the court of Count Olensky, although his sexual proclivities are hinted at, for Madame Olenska is forbidden by her family from talking about anything unpleasant with them, despite her need for emotional support. Countess Olenska has a lot to say, though, and ends up continually falling in and out of favor with high-class society. Archer, in contrast, feels like his talks with Madame Olenska are liberating experiences, as if his time in society were dulling his senses. For Madame Olenska, Archer provides emotional support. However, Madame Olenska is pressed, by Archer no less, not to file for divorce and bring scandal upon her family. After a few years in America, the Count begins begging her to return to him, at any price. Suddenly, her family turns against her, insisting that a woman's place is by her husband and denying monetary support, all behind the back of their newest member, Newland Archer, whom they know to be Madame Olenska's ally. In the end, the family fails to return Madame Olenska to her husband, but they do succeed in their primary goal, to separate her from Archer. The author of The Age of Innocence, Edith Wharton, uses the term Old New York to describe the upper-class society of New York around the 1870s, her adolescence. Make no mistake, though, this backwards glance, written in the 1920s, is no romanticization. The society is ugly, the standards it imposes on its members, especially the women, even more so. The women were supposed to be little else but room fixtures, simpletons but for what their husbands had the manly privilege to teach them, with no opinions that had not first been given to them by a man. And yet they were supposed to be able to keep house, entertain guests, and engage in what sporting activities society deemed elegant. They were forbidden from having affairs, but for their husbands all bets were off. This is made abundantly clear in the dichotomy between Archer's wife, May Welland, and his lover, Ellen Olenska. May actually has a large supply of personal strength, but is too indoctrinated into society and not allowed enough agency to use it often. While Madame Olenska is initially ignorant of the customs of old New York, she quickly learns of their insidiousness, leaving to stay in the more motley Washington, D.C. soon after, and eventually settling in the Tuileries of France. But what happened to Archer? He and May stayed together and had 3 kids who grew up in a new, fast-paced, heavily industrialized age, scoffing at their parents' all-important manners and restrictive social norms. In this way, things came out better in the end, albeit not because of anything our characters did. It certainly isn't a happy ending, especially the final scene, which only serves to pour salt in the wound, but the book isn't a dime store romance. It's not the story of 2 people, it's not even the story of a group of people. It's the story of a society and how that society shaped its members, and stories about the inexorable forces of society don't usually have happy endings.